For as long as I can remember, I've had insomnia. I simply couldn't fall asleep as easily as the rest of my family. Because I was always so tired, I was brought to many doctors, but all of them concluded that it was just the way I am. Anyways, this insomnia didn't go away, not even in my almost 20s. That's when I took the job as a pizza delivery driver. I specifically took the night shift so that I wouldn't be wasting time at home and I could at least help some night owls like me. The shift was always kind of bland. All the deliveries were in the city, and on the rare occasions I had to go further, it wasn't really a problem, as I actually enjoyed late-night drives. Best thing is that there were almost no complaints ever. It was a night just like any other night, and I was about to clock out of work when we got a last-minute delivery call. 2 large pepperoni pizzas. The cook, who was the only coworker I was with that late in the night, quickly prepared them before giving me the address. I didn't recognize the name of the street, so I just assumed that it was a pretty far away location. And I wasn't wrong. I drove for about half an hour on a dirt road before I reached the destination. It was a hospital. Since it was pretty far away from the city, I figured that there was just staff working the night shift and they needed some extra energy. There was something familiar about the place. I parked my car and got out. Almost all of the lights were off except for the ground floor lights. I walked on the path leading to the building and knocked. Almost immediately, a nurse opened the door. There was something in the smile she had on her face. It was unnaturally wide. I handed her the pizza and she handed me the money. But as I was taking the payment out of her hand, she grasped my arm and pulled me inside. I was so surprised that I didn't really react, just stood there with a blank face. I wanted to get out, but 3 staff members blocked the doors I had come through. In a semicircle around me, about 10 people sat in rocking chairs. All of them had the same unnaturally wide smile. My brain just went numb. I could have never imagined that I would end in such a predicament. Suddenly, a glass-shattering scream came from one of the upstairs rooms. None of the staff seemed fazed. They all just stood there smiling at me. "Time for dinner," they said, and all got up at the same time. They started heading for the room the scream had come from. Even the people at the door. That was my chance. I ran to the door and just crashed into it. It seemed that they locked it because it didn't open right away, but I eventually got outside and headed for my car. I got in. Right before I started the engine, I took one last look at the building and saw someone in the window. One of my old coworkers was smashing himself against the window, trying to break through. He went missing a week before the incident, and everyone thought that he quit. Now I see that he didn't. As I was backing away with my car, the very same nurse that opened the door for me came running and screaming at the top of her lungs. But I couldn't understand what she was saying. I never drove home so fast in my entire life. I got to my apartment and locked the door, then locked myself in my bedroom. I did not close my eyes the whole night. I called the police the next morning, and they went to check my claims. They told me that the hospital looked as if it had not been used in decades, with all of its old machinery still in place. Only a thing was fresh, a pile of bones discovered somewhere on the 2nd floor of the building. The bones were so clean they were white, and they didn't have a single trace of meat left on them. I am pretty sure that that was my ex-coworker, Ted. The next week I got a box in the mail. It wasn't big or decorated in any way, it just said present. Inside there was Ted's name tag, and on the bottom of the box there was written in blood, "From your friends in St. Martin Hospital. Say hello to your sister." My sister died in a hospital with that name 6 years ago. Then I heard a knock on the door. This all happened a few weeks ago. I managed to make it back to this dimension alive, but only by the skin of my teeth. I really need to find a new line of work. I didn't want to be a delivery man. Nobody chooses this life for themselves. Nobody grows up with the dream planted in their mind that they want to be the world's fastest pizza guy one day. Driving around in a beat-up jalopy with the smell of pepperoni in your nose. You know what sucks the most about it? You know that smell of delicious, fresh-baked pizza that makes your mouth water when you get a pie delivered? When you're a delivery guy, you just get to sit in that smell all day, and then you don't get to eat the pizza. You just get to smell it and let your mouth fill with saliva, Thinking about how you wish you made more money so you could afford to buy an extra large with all the toppings, garlic bread crust, and a side of hot wings with blue cheese dipping sauce for good measure. That's where I was at mentally as I sat in my shitty car, my battery slowly dying as I listened to the radio and enjoyed the last little bit of light afforded by the headlamps. Tow truck's gonna be here soon, I kept telling myself, smelling the pizza in the back seat. Any minute, the tow truck is gonna be here. I rolled down the window and stuck my head out, craning my neck to see into the distance behind me. The smell of the fresh autumn night air filled my nostrils and replaced the cheese and hot-baked dough and tomato sauce. At first I thought there was a pair of headlights, but then whatever it was blinked out of existence and disappeared, like the glowing eyes of some great cat. I rolled up the window quickly, shivering from the cold draft as it filled the car. The address was supposed to be right here. I had actually been idling while I checked the directions on my phone. The GPS confirmed that I was where I was supposed to be, but there was no driveway, just untouched forest surrounding the road as far as the eye could see. Somehow I had run out of gas despite my tank being half full. When I checked the time, it was as if I had been daydreaming for hours, like I had been in a trance while looking for the address on my phone. The sun had gone down at some point, and it was well past 11 at night, the moon overhead glowing an eerie pumpkin orange. That was when I had called the tow truck, but it seemed as if they weren't coming. Confused and bewildered, I got out of the car and looked around, wondering if they had gotten lost. I pulled my phone out and hit the redial button for the towing company, but this time all I got was static, as if whoever had picked up the phone was in a different dimension, separated from me by a wall of entropy. The brush on the other side of the road suddenly began to rustle and sway, as if something were moving behind it, trying to stay hidden but too large to manage that successfully. "Hello?" I called out, hearing the quiver in my own voice and wishing I sounded braver. Wishing I were braver. "Who's there?" Another sound came from behind me, and I spun around to get back in the car, terrified of whatever was stalking me so far out in the middle of this night-black forest. But the car door slammed shut as I bumped into it with my wide hips. Too many hours of sitting and not enough sit-ups. Too many undeliverable pizzas eaten in parking lots for half price. Too many years of not taking care of myself taunted me as I grabbed the door handle and tried to pull it open, but found it locked. The keys still inside, jammed into the ignition slot, mocking me. The rustling sound came again, and this time it was from behind another tree, and another. Movements were heard on all sides as my eyes darted back and forth from place to place, seeing huge, hulking shadows hiding behind the trees all around. "Who's there?" I nearly shrieked, my voice high and breaking. "Stay back! I've got a gun!" I didn't have anything of the sort, but it was the only thing which came to mind that could potentially ward off threats of such size and terrifying proportions. A shadow began to emerge from behind one of the trees, and another came from behind me. I heard their huge, lumbering footsteps coming closer as their features became discernible in the waning light of the moon. Their faces were obscured by the shadows of tree limbs and broken boughs above us, the half-bare branches shedding leaves like dead tissue, falling all around. The warmth of one creature's hot breath was in my face as I stood, petrified, nowhere to run. My back was pressed up against the cold steel of the car, the window glass squeaking against my skin as I trembled with fear. Sharp, long, hooked and pointed teeth grated together as gray lips pulled back into a grin. A mouth as wide as a windshield opened up as if to devour me, its pointed tongue salivating and dripping. And then it surprised me by speaking, its voice a rumbling baritone, deep enough to shake my teeth in their sockets. "Are you from Domino's?" it asked, spraying me with fine droplets of spittle. The acid burn of them sizzled on my cheeks. I ordered 8 large pizzas to this address. My hand was shaking badly as I hooked a thumb towards the back seat. "In there," I managed to stutter. "Locked. By mistake." There was a heavy, deep-sounding sigh, as the creature was clearly annoyed by my amateur actions. But instead of eating me as an alternative, he smashed the window with his claw and reached inside, removing the boxes. A bit cold," the thing said, sounding irritated. "You look to be warm-blooded, though. Your blood might make for an interesting marinara." A screeching roar came from the woods and the creature huffed and let out a sigh. Yes, Mother. I suppose we should leave him alive. Otherwise, who will deliver the way out here? He began to stalk back into the darkness of the forest, leaving me behind in my soiled and warm wet pants. It is so hard to find good help these days. You really must bring back that 30-minute guarantee. We used to get so much free pizza in this dimension. What dimension? I called after the thing, looking around with confusion at the forest of trees whose branches now whipped and coiled like angry snakes. How the hell was I going to get home? I looked down and saw a $50 bill was laying at my feet with the head of a monster in place of President Grant. Shit, not again. At least these guys tip better than the last place.